Add a little movement and lots of boho style to your designs with tassels. Hi, I'm Katie Hacker. Designer and blogger Molly Schaller adds beads to silky tassels, and she even makes tassels from leather for a really fun look. Hey Molly.
Hi Katie.
Welcome. These are some beautiful necklaces you're making. I love the way they come together.
Thanks, they're a ton of fun to make too.
Yeah, well, it looks like you've been making lots.
I have. I just want to, I want to do another and another.
Just keep going and going.
Yeah.
Well, these are beautiful, and the coral colored one is one of my favorites.
Those are some of my favorite beads, and that rose is just really fun.
Yeah, it is, and it looks like you used embroidery floss with those, but you're going to show us how to use leather. You could also use other kinds of threads, so really any type of cording that you like.
Yeah, there's so many options out there, and play around and go into the stores and find things that really speak to you and that you're interested in working with.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to stand in front of that whole wall of beads and make your choices.
It is.
All right,
definitely.
So what do you want to show us first?
I think I'm going to start with the tassel because that's kind of the focal, and you can kind of work off of that once you've got your tassel.
Okay.
And once you're ready to start making your project, you're going to need to choose a couple basic materials. One is your leather. I like using like a suede lace. This is really nice. You don't want anything too thick because you do want to have some movement. And then you also need a bead cap, or you can go ahead and just leave it off on like I've done on a lot of these. You can kind of wrap it with some other leather, but I really like the finished look of the bead cap. And then you're going to need some wire, and you're going to choose a focal bead. So once you've got your focal bead chosen, choose something that really is pendant worthy. You know, you want something with some texture and a lot of interest. You can use a connector as your focal bead because it's going to connect between your necklace and the tassel.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead, and there are a lot of ways you can make tassels, but I like to be old-fashioned and just use my hands for them. So this is not a very deep bead cap. So you don't need lots and lots of leather. You can get quite a few tassels, 2 or 3 out of one loop of leather here.
Okay.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start wrapping just around my hand. And if you wanted a longer tassel, then you'd want to maybe choose a piece of cardboard or something, whatever is the length you'd like to use. Or there's some great tassel making tools out there too that you can use. But I've found that for my project, I really love just the length of my hand.
I like that Tan too because it's really soft.
Oh, yeah, and that's important. It has to be really flexible to make a good tassel. So I've wrapped about 4 times around my hand here, and I try to begin and end kind of at the same spot. Even though it's not technically what they're for, I use my wire cutters here. They work really well too. And then, once I've got these guys all set, my little loops ready, I'm gonna cut off a piece, and I like to give myself a lot of wire because you can always trim it off at the end, but once it's in, well, once you've trimmed it off, you can't make it any longer.
Right, better to have more than you need.
Yeah, so I go ahead and I pass it through the loops and gather it up like this. So this is the beginning of your tassel. Then I'm gonna use my chain nose pliers, and I'm gonna have one end that's about 1 inch long. Like I said, I give myself a little extra, and I'm gonna bend that wire around, and the longer wire I'm gonna bend up. I'm gonna make a nice 90-degree angle in it. Then you can just use your fingers and twist.
So you're coiling the short end around
the long one. And then you squeeze it together because these are relatively deep bead caps, but if you make too long of a coil here, you're gonna see this wire sticking out of the end of your bead cap, and you don't really want it showing. So then I'll go ahead, trim it off, and feed it up through my tassel. And so there's the basic start. It's so easy. And then you're gonna feed it through your focal bead, or if you were using a connector, you could just go ahead and make a loop around your connector. But feed it through the focal bead, and then you're gonna just make a wrap loop. And then it's gonna be ready to attach to the rest of your project. So go ahead and pull this around.
Looks good.
Yeah, if you find beads with texture, or maybe your favorite stone to use for these focal beads, and just really, really have a lot of fun with it. Then you snip that off, and then at the end, you're just gonna snip the loops. And then come back with some scissors, and you're gonna neaten it up because it looks better if it's tidy. Yeah. So you've got your great focal right there.
That looks good.
Thanks.
Those are fun.
So why don't we move on? I'm gonna go ahead and save these off there. And I wanted to also mention, if you feel more secure, you can also add a couple drops of glue inside the
bead cap.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's a nice way to make it fancy too.
Okay.
And if you'd like, also on a couple of these, I used some charms as well as a focal bead, so you can play with that. Like use some charms that really speak to you, or maybe the person you're making it for has a favorite place to travel, like Paris, or are into yoga. So you could use maybe the lotus symbol or something like that.
Yeah, so that could dangle in front of your focal bead or
yeah,
with it.
Just add a little bit more interest and texture and design into your piece. Now, you're going to get to choose the beads that will make up the bulk of our necklace. I like to choose rounds for the main beads. These are really great wooden beads, or you can choose other natural materials. Like these are shells that are composite that have kind of been pressed together, or you can go with something really sparkly like the necklace I'm wearing or these beads over here. So you can play around with it. There's so many different designs you can work with this just basic design.
Right.
So to get started, what we need to do is we need to talk a little bit about the cord. I like to use silk cording with an attached needle. These come in these little, they almost look like embroidery packets, and lots of different colors, but they also have different sizes. So when you're choosing the thread to use in your necklace, make sure that when you make a knot, that the thread isn't too narrow and the knot falls through the bead.
Yeah,
you
that's
want
a really good tip to just make a little test first before you start.
So I've gone ahead and I've taken this off of the card. Something you need to do when you do that, after you do it, is give it a stretch, because this is silk, it's a natural material, it has a little give. And so you stretch it like this, just go down the length of all of it and give it a stretch. It also takes the kinks out that it gained when it was on the card, and it'll give you a better drape. So what you're gonna do is, I usually make at the beginning a knot at the very end so that I'm not losing all the beads, and it gives you a little safety net there. Then we're going to use this right here, which is actually a tiny coil of metal. It's called French wire or bullion. And what you're going to do is you're going to trim a little piece off about this size, and you're going to use that over your thread so that where you're putting your clasp is protected. The silk is pretty strong, but metal's a little stronger.
A little extra resistance.
Yeah, definitely. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to put it on here over the needle. I already put a piece on right here that you can see, and you're going to slide it down. I usually pinch while I slide it down. You're going to string a few beads first. Actually, these are your first beads. You're going to string a few beads. 2 or 3 is usually what I string. And you're going to slide the French wire down toward your beads.
Okay, and normally you would use the whole card of silk and start from the end, but it's way easier to show when you have a smaller piece like this.
These are really pretty long, and you end up going like this a lot. And I thought, for everyone here, I'll just keep it simple. Yeah. So then you're going to go ahead and string your clasp, and you're going to pass your wire, or your wire needle, back through here.
So you skip over your French wire and just go through the first bead.
Yeah, so it's going to end up making a tiny horseshoe for you, shape that will enclose your clasps loop like this. And you're going to go ahead and pull it up like that. So that gives it a really finished look.
Yeah, it does.
Then you're going to begin with your knotting here.
And the first few knots you always tie by hand.
Yeah, I do that. And it just kind of do that. And then you go to your next bead and do the same thing. Actually, a couple of mine popped off there.
Let me move these out of your way here.
Okay, thank you. So you do that, and then you get to use your knotting tool. Now, once you get going on this, you'll keep going in the same pattern. But some beads you might try to find a fit, but you might have a hard time getting it back through that second pass through the bead. So what you need to do is use a bead reamer, which is, pearls are notorious for having small holes.
Right.
And so what you would do is, actually I brought a bead reamer with me.
Okay, before we do that, let's see you tie a knot, and then we'll do the pearl too.
Okay, why don't I go ahead and, you could go back through 1 or 2, but I have one on here. I just did this. I'm gonna put a little bit of glue right here to hold that in place. So just like dot a little bit of glue. And then I'll string my next bead, and I would trim that off, but I'm just gonna let it sit there for now. So this is how you do your pearl knotting. What you do is, I usually take this in my non-dominant hand, and you have the loose bead right here, and I go like this. I make kind of it's like a loop around, and I drop those beads through the hole. Now this little tool right here is what will make this magic.
Right, and there is a way to do
wonderful.
this with a knotting, with an awl, but this
yes.
it just makes it easy.
I prefer this. I like this, the action here. I feel like I get really nice, good knots, and sometimes I'll actually pull that knot close to the bead that I'm getting ready to knot, and then I will go ahead and put it right up there next to this, and then slowly, don't rush here, slowly push it off the tip, and then you get a really nice knot right next to your bead. I'll do it one more time.
And it makes it really even and consistent, and it's speedy too.
It is. Once you get going, you can actually string almost all the beads for your necklace and just slide them up. So when I made that knot, pulling it down, tucking it in there, really getting it tight, and then pulling it up like that. And you just continue along. You know, you can add your accent beads here and there. You can add your larger beads with, like, sometimes if you'll have, like, this bead has a much larger hole than these beads. That's part of the reason I use these tiny little accents, is because they can make it more consistent.
Yeah, or you could nest it between your smaller beads too. Okay, so I'll move this one and you can show us how to use the reamer.
Yes. Now this tool right here is a bead reamer. It's got batteries in it. I've also seen handheld ones that you can use. And pearls. These pearls have decent sized holes, but you know, maybe I wanted larger knots, or maybe it's on something with that I really need to enlarge the holes. I have a big cord that I was using for other things.
Well, if you use them at the beginning and the end, you have to pass through twice. And a lot of times freshwater pearls won't allow for, even if you used a small silk, but you might not want to be using that throughout the whole necklace.
Yes.
You know, so it makes sense that you need to ream them sometimes.
So I thought I'd just show you a little bit about it.
Okay.
And so this, makes a little buzzing sound, and it's got like a sandpapery point here. And part of the reason we have this water bowl here is because when you do this, it creates quite a lot of heat. And because pearls are, you know, freshwater pearls are a natural material, it's a little bit fragile, and you want to baby them, right?
Right, and you don't want to get your fingers hot either.
Exactly, it burns. So you can go ahead and do this, and you just buzz it in there. There we go, now it's going. And you can see the material coming out of the pearl, and we have a much, much larger hole now to pass through with our silk.
Perfect.
There's that.
Okay.
Now we're ready for this part. I wanted to go ahead and show you, this is a tassel I made with a connector. Wait for you to get that.
That's okay.
Over there, are you good? Okay. This is the necklace I've made. I've gone ahead, I've put all these beads in there. I have like one of these larger beads every so often. And then as I come down closer to where I'm going to put the tassel, I put a couple more fancier beads. Or not fancy, but like more accent beads. I think it makes it more interesting to have stuff down there next to the tassel. And as you can see, the cord was much longer before. So the one I was using was not their typical length. And so all you do is, I will usually put some of these larger spacers on next to the tassel. And this is a great connector. You can just pass right through there. Oop.
Yeah, it's fun to use the ones that have loops already on the back.
I know, it makes it so easy.
If you were using one of your focals that you made before, then you'd have your wrapped loop there.
Yeah, it'd be all just ready to go. And you could also use something shiny like this. That might be a kind of fun thing. Or like on my necklace, you could add the shiny part and, you know, part way through, and just to add a little more interest, make it more fun.
Yeah,
really.
why not?
Yeah.
Make it more your own too.
Exactly.
Not so cookie cutter.
So then, once you've got that going, you go ahead and you continue the same way with the knotting. Actually, I might ask you for my knotting tool back.
Here you go.
Thank you, just in case. I think I might need it.
I think it gets more challenging the further you get along when you're knotting, because you have such a bundle of beads.
Yeah, that you're dropping through there.
Yeah, so let's see your method for that.
All right, challenging me. Here we go. So, actually, I might ask you to pass a couple of those beads back here too. Maybe 2 or 3 of the blue ones.
Here you go.
Yeah, that's perfect. And so I'm going to go ahead, and we're almost to the end here. I'm needing like 2 or 3 more beads. Actually, could I have one more just because I want it to be symmetrical.
Yes, of course.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to string all 3 of these beads. The last 3. And I'm gonna keep them relatively close. Now I don't have any knots between these last two yet.
Okay.
But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna string my French wire. And I'll string also and also when you're pulling the French wire over this part right here, really pinch it tightly. Otherwise it'll start to uncoil.
Sometimes it wants to uncoil, yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and get this guy all the way to the end here. And then once it's down there, you'll go ahead and pass your jump ring through. There's another one. This one looks a little bit nicer. Pass your jump ring through. And you're going to once again make that kind of horseshoe shape. And I have found that it is better to be really tight along here than it is to have too much space between your beads because it doesn't look as tidy. So go ahead and really try to cozy them up. And as you practice doing the knotting, it'll get a little easier and you'll have a better feel for it. But I go ahead and I really pretty much keep the beads close together. So I've gone ahead and I have it here. And I just make a knot through here. Oh, I might not have to pass all the beads through, Katie.
So then you'll start like you did before where you just tie
the knots around.
Tie your knot by hand.
By hand, like that. So you've got that first one done. But still because there's that little tiny bit of stretch, and then you just kind of peel these guys back. Do the next one.
Perfect.
And you do that last one, and then you'll go ahead and you will put a bit of glue on this last one. And I usually actually pass through that third bead as well so that...
I do too. And then it buries the end.
Yeah, it buries the end, and then you hope that like the glue will wick up through that bead, and so then it's like a little bit of backup. Sometimes you have to wiggle, like give the beads a twist here and there to get that wire through, because like I said, it is a little tough sometimes, but you can get it.
Well, and by now your needle has been through all the beads, so
it has.
That's just how it is.
This is what this tool is great for. This is like a little knotting plier, and then you can really get into those tight spots and pull it right through.
Perfect.
And then you just add your glue, and you have a great necklace ready to go.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at your example over here. This one is one that you used a toggle clasp. And that way you can use it a little bit, you can interchange it as a necklace or a bracelet. So that's another way you could change it up and suit your style.
And once you get started knotting, I don't know if you're like me, you like that repetitive motion, and you'll just want that's like something that you can make long ones so that you can double them or triple them over your neck, wear them as bracelets, do whatever you'd like.
That one is really pretty. I love the way that you combine the different druzy beads. These big ones have a little bit of exposed druzy inside, so they've got a lot of texture, and then mixing with the rondelles and your rounds. And this one is really pretty too, with is that a carnelian? It's a special semi-precious stone in the middle there. Yeah. With your stones too. And if you didn't want to knot, you could put seed beads in between and we won't tell.
Yeah, and they look really pretty that way. You could use beading wire if you're more comfortable with beading wire.
All right, well thank you so much, Molly. This is great.